Good morning. I'm Julie Riley, and on behalf of the Special Education Advisory Committee, also known as SEAC, I welcome everyone to today's summit. And thank you so much for attending. I would like to introduce my parent SEAC co-chairs, and they will stand when I say their names: Amnathan Cannon and Victoria Aiello. I am just so happy to see so many parents here today. As I think we've mentioned, it's been a record-breaking attendance, and this annual event is a wonderful opportunity and resource for parents to connect and to receive information and resources and about community services. The breakout sessions and the resource fair provide just a terrific opportunity for parents to learn, gather information, and to talk to each other. And I can't overestimate the communication piece. In fact, SEAC this year enhanced our communication piece. SEAC meets the fourth Thursday of every month in Carver, and we have childcare, so I want to say that. And each month we have a topic or two relevant to the special education community. But this year, in addition to our public comments, which is another part of our communication piece, we have formalized the parent-to-parent networking component of the event. This is so we don't have to talk out in the cold in the parking lot as we used to do for many years with parents. The meeting details for SEAC are on the SEAC page on the MCPS website, and you can also link there to the emails of the co-chairs if you have specific questions, concerns, or requests for information. MCCPTA is also a valuable part of the parent communication piece, and I would like to recognize and thank Jean Taylor. Please stand, Jean. Jean, she is the chair of the MCCPTA Special Education Committee and my captain on MCCPTA. Jean is also a strong voice for students with special needs and their families and has for years been an invaluable resource for parents. Today she's presenting a session on how to be an effective parent advocate with extremely valuable strategies, tips, and resources. Jean is also hosting the annual MCCPTA Special Education Award ceremony. It will be May 14th at Rockville High School. The formal program begins at 7 with a pre-program reception at 6:45. This program honors the many students, teachers, school programs, and parents who have made outstanding contributions to the special education community within MCPS. And this year, I'm also so happy to share that SEAC co-chair Victoria Aiello will be receiving an Outstanding Parent Award, and believe me, she is truly outstanding. As a final note about SEAC and MCCPTA, we both have tables at the resource fair. We have a variety of materials, articles, and lists of community organizations, and we are also there to provide any guidance or strategies or to hear your concerns, so I hope you are able to stop by. Now for our keynote speakers. Reverend Robin Williams Evans has a master's in divinity from Howard University's School of Divinity. She served as an associate minister for 12 years at Riverside Baptist Church of Southwest Washington, D.C. Reverend Williams is the founder and director of A Pastor's Place, a not-for-profit organization that specializes in spiritual, emotional, and physical health and wellness for clergy and church congregations and special needs advocacy. Reverend Williams is a firm believer in post-traumatic growth and his tremendous ability to take crisis and turn it into a firm foundation that transforms people into their best selves. She is also the mother of a son with special needs and the recent recipient of the ARC of Montgomery County's Advocate of the Year Award. She wrote the award-winning bestseller, How to Live a Happy Life with a Special Needs Child, and currently lives in Maryland with her husband and our other keynote speaker, Dr. Wayne Evans. Dr. Evans is a psychologist and founder of Practical Alternatives, which provides emotional-centered psychological and consultation services. Dr. Evans uses therapy as a tool for helping individuals discover new ways to resolve old problems. His motto is, change begins with a choice. Dr. Evans is also a gifted motivational speaker who has conducted numerous workshops and seminars dealing with depression, anxiety, grief recovery, and post-traumatic growth. Dr. Evans and Reverend Evans have been married for 13 years. They are the proud parents of Wyatt, an extraordinary boy living and thriving with cerebral palsy. I give you Dr. Evans and Reverend Evans.
Good morning. Becoming the father of a special needs child, I understand, is kind of like planning a trip. You plan to go to Italy. You learn the language, you prepare, you get little travel books where you can see all the sights. You get on the plane, and you land in Holland. Now, Holland is a perfectly lovely place, but it's not where you plan to go. But you get off the plane anyway, and the journey begins. Everyone is the hero of their own story. So says Joseph Campbell, mythologist and author of the book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Stories are the way that people give life its meaning and purpose. Here, ordinary men and women are faced with the task of deciding what their life will become. Either a redemptive story of moving from slavery to freedom, or a heartbreaking tale where one refuses to change and remains bound. Now, from these stories, three kinds of people emerge: heroes, villains, and victims. Each has a defining moment of tragedy or pain that determines the trajectory of their lives and the nature of their identity. Ultimately, what makes a person the hero or the villain or the victim of their story is what they decide to do with their pain. Heroes use their pain to change themselves and or the world for the better. That would be people like Helen Keller, or Dr. King, or John Walsh of America's Most Wanted. Villains, on the other hand, use their pain to subjugate or hurt the world. That would be Darth Vader, or for my Black Panther fans, Killmonger. Yeah. And victims use their pain to justify giving up and submitting to whatever the world gives to them. Hero, villain, or victim. I remember the moment when life challenged me to declare what kind of story my life was going to be and who I would become as I lived it. It was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. For 9 months, we had waited, prepared, and prayed. I was so excited when my wife, Robin, told me I was going to be a father. When we found out it was going to be a boy, I was ecstatic. A furious search for names ensued, and we settled on Wyatt, like the gunfighter. Naturally, I had my moments of doubt, but I decided to respond to those feelings with prayer, positivity, and proactively doing whatever it took to prepare properly. My wife, she wanted a natural childbirth. Okay? We enrolled in a 12-week birthing class using a technique called the Bradley method. Over those 3 months of lessons, I think I learned and saw more about the birthing process than I ever wanted to know. But I also learned how important my role as husband and partner was going to be in the actual birthing process. With each weekly session, my confidence and my certainty grew. A close friend of mine from college, Shikana, agreed to be our doula, a person who provides support for the mother during and after the childbirth. Everything was falling into place. We talked so much about Wyatt, what we were going to do when he got here, that my mother joked that it felt like the boy was already here. Finally, delivery day came. Robin's contractions began very early in the morning. By the time we got to the hospital, she was fully dilated. Again, everything was lining up perfectly. I was already thinking of how I was going to brag to all of our friends and our family about how Robin handled that business without meds. Especially to all the naysayers who said she'd change her mind when the pain came, which she did. Yes, it was going so well. And then it wasn't. Wyatt's heartbeat disappeared. After several frantic moments, Robin was taken from the room and an emergency C-section was performed. What felt like an eternity passed. Shekinah and I waited. Finally, the doctors came in and told us that Robin was fine, but the baby had been without oxygen for 17 minutes and wasn't doing well. A tsunami of grief and terror and uncertainty threatened to overwhelm me. This was the worst thing that could have happened. Would Wyatt survive? Would he be okay? What were we going to do now? Ultimately, Wyatt did survive. And he came home 5 weeks later, right before Mother's Day. Unfortunately, he did not emerge from this experience unscathed. He now struggles with a variety of medical issues, including cerebral palsy. Those first months were difficult for Robin and for me. All of the demands of new parenthood had increased exponentially, while many of the precious first joys had been stripped away. Our earliest moments as parents were not marked by happy congratulations from family or endless picture taking of our new baby. Instead, we were ushered into parenthood through a veil of tears and terror. Uncertainty and sorrow were our constant companions. For me, this was uncharted territory. There was so much I didn't know and wasn't sure how to deal with. Time passed. My grieving became complicated. The initial relief and gratitude that I had felt had soured into an abiding sense of bitterness. Life with Wyatt at times for me was like living with a ghost. A whispered promise that had been made but not kept. At first, we could pretend like nothing had happened. But as the delays in this development became more pronounced, I had to grapple with the fact that my son was now a special needs child. Now the question before me was, who was I going to be now? The words of Malcolm X echoed through my mind. My faith had been shattered in a way that I did not think was possible. I had entered what theologians and philosophers call the dark night of the soul. It's when something has happened and you can't be who you were. You can't be who you were. But you've not yet become who you are going to be. You're in the middle. And it's dark. You cannot see. And the reality of it is that the pain is going to push you until you can create a vision that will pull you. And that's when you have to choose. Long ago, my dad, God rest his soul, taught me never surrender your identity to a circumstance. He once told me when my back was against the wall for a different set of reasons. Son, I've known you your whole life. And I know when you set your mind to something, it always gets done. So if you are struggling, it's because you have not set your mind. Set your mind, son. Set your mind. And so I did. it began with choosing a new identity for myself. I decided that since I was the father of a special needs child, I had to become a special operations father, like the Navy SEALs, but for dads. Because we, the special needs dads, shout outs to all my dads, we endure and overcome what baffles, bewilders, and breaks ordinary men. We are the ones who help make the way when others do not have the sense to stay. We are the ones whose presence is rarely seen but always felt. We are the ones who stand up and step up when other people simply give up. We are the ones who refuse to leave anybody behind. I decided to become an operator. What does it mean to be an operator? Who is an operator? Well, according to the Special Operations Command Network, yeah, I checked. The term operator implies, quote, personal operational readiness and extraordinary willingness to successfully employ military capability across distance for some duration in situations, circumstances, conditions, and influence of hardship and hazard. Tell me that does not sound like being a special needs parent. My mission was tougher, so I was going to have to be tougher and smarter and braver and develop more endurance. Next, I began to look for role models. Who were the people that had become special needs parents that did not lose themselves inside of the role of caretaker? I found people like Dan Marino and Al Roker. I found Holly Robinson Peete from 21 Jump Street. That's right. And her husband Randall. But I also found like regular folk, like Boris Wojcicki. His son Nick was born with no arms and no legs. I believe they're from Australia. Nick has grown up, has started 2 organizations, and has authored several books. No arms, no legs. I'm still working on my book, y'all. He was once profiled on CBS this Sunday morning, and when the segment started, he was cooking himself breakfast. But make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, we, the world, would not have Nick if he had not had his father, Boris. That's who I had become. I had become Boris. There was also a woman by the name of Lula Hardaway. Now, you might not have heard of Miss Holloway, but you might have heard of her son. He's a musician. His stage name is Stevie Wonder. Y'all heard of Stevie Wonder? That's what I'm talking about. But again, without Miss Hardaway, we would not have Stevie. No songs in the key of life. No, y'all know what I'm talking about. I got time to go through the catalog. All right. There's Lon Solomon, who's the pastor of McLean Bible over in Virginia. And there is my friend, Joe Butler. I actually met Joe at McLean Bible several years ago at their annual Accessibility Summit. Joe has 3 children. His son has cerebral palsy and is on the autism spectrum. And he has 2 typically developing daughters. Now, I thought I was a Navy SEAL. Joe, God bless him, has built an organization called Ability Tree. You can find it on the internet. They build facilities where special needs and typically developing children can play together. That's a hero, y'all. In a real sense, these men and women have taken their pain, their disappointment, and their grief, and transformed it into power that is making the world a better place for themselves and for other people. They are the heroes. Each has turned what could have been a tragedy or a cautionary tale into a shining epic of hope and encouragement. Now, what is an epic? An epic is a story of enduring significance. Like the Iliad in Greek mythology, the Exodus story in the Bible, the story of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, or the story of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. All right. And now for me and Robin, it's about helping people grow out of their adversity and into their destiny and into their victory. A life that can be filled with laughter and love, happiness and hope, joy and peace. And so, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce to you one of my heroes, my own personal Wonder Woman, Robin Williams Evans.
Just to kind of continue the story that Wayne started, I wanted to emphasize the 17 minutes that Wyatt went without oxygen. And just to put things in perspective, when an adult goes without oxygen for 15 minutes, they call time of death. But for a baby, because the brain is plastic, it's pliable, they work a little bit longer. So I always like to say his reset button got hit, and we were sub-zero. And so his primary diagnosis is cerebral palsy, but he also suffers from chronic lung disease, epilepsy, vision and hearing impaired. He eats through a G-tube. He's wheelchair bound, and he's nonverbal. But you just met his father, and so you know that Wyatt has plucked that gene from his tree. So although he's nonverbal, he's very vocal. But once Wyatt was born, Wayne and I tried desperately to resume the life that we had before Wyatt was born. Resume the life as far as the familiarity, the regularity, the same relationships at the same level that we had before. But it was impossible. Our lives were shredded to the point where people that I would normally interact with, including family members, and I'll get to that a little bit later, acted like they didn't know what to say or what to do, so they were silent. We tried to, what I like to say, fake the funk as far as pretending, because it was very difficult to accept really what was given to us upon discharge from the hospital. The attending physician said, Wyatt will achieve no milestone. Horrible, horrible advice that you could give to a family that's already dealing with so much. And so we didn't know what was going on. We no longer had time to deal with unproductive relationships. So when your life is shattered to pieces, for us, we were forced to then figure out how to live again. And so when you figure out how to live again, I personally like to divide my life into pre-Wyatt, post-Wyatt. So with pre-Wyatt, this is the way I function. Post-Wyatt, I don't have time to deal with how I functioned before. And so I had to learn how to maximize the little bit of time that I had. So I was forced to put relationships under a microscope to figure out, do I continue to maintain them? Are they productive? Unproductive? What do I need to do with these relationships? And so Wayne and I have developed a life motto. We like to engage in win-win relationships. And I had discovered after analyzing my relationships that I was in a win-lose relationship and I was the loser. Too much time where people were very focused on their needs, and now that we have different needs, needs that need to be primary, they were unwilling to adjust for us. So we had to make hard decisions. And this included family, friends and family. And so I am not trying to give the impression that any of these decisions were easy, because they were painful. And I had very lengthy, tear-filled conversations with folks who chose to remain unmoved, unmotivated to make any kind of alteration to how they chose to relate to us. So they had to go. And so we had to deal with these unproductive relationships by severing, by cutting these ties. And so also too, we didn't know what to do. We floundered the first 2 years of Wyatt's life. And when I talked about before, faking the funk, because it just really didn't resonate completely. And one of the motivations as to why I wrote this book, as far as for parents who like to plan, to see what does my child's life look like long term, potentially, because I know we have a variety of diagnoses that are represented in this room. But to be able to know that it doesn't have to be in that acute state all the time, and that you can choose to evolve out of that. And so when I was saying faking the funk, basically we were at like a birthday party, and we had to sit on the floor with Wyatt, because all the other kids were on the floor, and they were manipulating some objects, and we were thinking that, you know, we were getting away with, you know, Wyatt looking like a typical kid and able to manipulate again, because we were in that avoidance stage. And so it became apparent to someone who had walked over to us to say, oh, what type of program is your child in? Then it became real, where we're like, oh, so we can't fake anymore. We really have to confront this head on. And so that's when we started to make a change. We were tired of being unhappy. And I found myself, because generally by default, I'm a happy person. But I found myself, because, you know, Wyatt's in a wheelchair. At the time, he had NG tube taped to the outside of his face. His presence invited comments that were not nice. And so an experience of that is when we were we'd gone to a hospital for an outpatient appointment, and we were all in the elevator, and Wyatt suffers from stridor, which is like a really, you know, heavy kind of breathing. And so when the elevator doors closed, everybody was quiet, all of a sudden you're breathing. And so I could see everybody looking around trying to figure out who was making that noise, and I had Wyatt in a little carrier that I had on my arm, and all the heads kind of looked down like this, and I was like, oh man, you know, and embarrassed about it, and so no one said anything. So we all left the elevator, come back, and I happened to run back into one of the couples, an older couple that was in the elevator at the same time that we were. And they were leaving the same time. They turned around and saw us come out the elevator. They turned around and come back, and they said, oh, can we ask, what's wrong with your child? Exactly. So that's what kept me in the house all the time, but I got tired of allowing life to dictate things where I could not be the person who I was born to be. So Wade and I decided that we had to reclaim our happiness. And trust me, happiness just doesn't knock on your door and says, here I am. You have to work for it. And just because you're happy today doesn't mean that tomorrow you're going to be happy. So you have to be deliberate about decisions and to put a plan in place as far as how to A, find happiness again, and B, to stay there. And during our breakout session, we're going to go into more details. But some of the things that we talked about is we had to create a cohesive care team. And that included doctors, school staff, daycare staff. These were all people that were extremely critical and essential in our lives, and we had to keep everybody communicating. So when you go to your doctor's appointments, and I talked about that in the book too, get email addresses. You will be amazed how responsive folks will be. And so once you get everybody on the same page, you sign all the appropriate forms to get people communicating, then that's when folks will ask me questions, they give me the technical terms, I converted to lay speak, I then communicated, and then they're like, well, what? And then I gotta go back, and so put them in contact with each other, and that way you create a very clear communication path. Also too, I highly recommend as far as trying to get to happiness is find friends that also have special needs children, right here. I have a bunch of friends that I have met along the journey that are in the audience now that I love dearly. I wasn't looking to make friends necessarily because the way that I interacted with life in the beginning is my head was down and I didn't make eye contact with people because as soon as I did, they thought that was an invitation to say or ask me crazy things about my child. And so I would meet people who were willing to step out and speak to me. And then when you have these other friends with special needs children, you can get together with them and there's no questions asked. Their kids could be bouncing off the walls or eating carpet or doing whatever, and we don't say anything about it. Because we know and understand. That's the best kind of friend. Best kind of friend that you can have. That you can totally let your hair down and not be embarrassed about your child's behavior. Also, too, they can be valuable as far as recommendations. One of the moms in the audience, Michelle, we're going to be at the same middle school next year. But she taught us, she gave me all kinds of information about handicapped vans, accessible vans. She had 2, so she was able to educate me about getting one for us. About dentists, if you haven't ventured out yet, not all dentists take special needs children or adults. So, you know, people can swap all kinds of information. So friends that have special needs kids are valuable. Swap numbers before you leave today. And also, too, just efforts to finding some happiness is that we found resources. And again, another reason why I wrote this book, I mean, there's no one place, and this is what I quickly discovered after Wyatt was born, is that I could not find one central location that had a good variety of information collected in the beginning. At the hospital, the social worker was very good about directing me to different places, but it only gave me this much information. And then when we became affiliated with the ARC, and they had another pocket of information. So in the back of the book, I list resources. I'm not saying this is the end-all be-all, and it's a growing list. But at least it'll get you started or make you more familiar with things that you might not have been familiar with before. So resources. And then also, during this time, as far as our journey to happiness, I was able to reconnect with my husband. You know, in the beginning, we became roommates because we were so focused on Wyatt's care. And the divorce rate among typical, you know, couples with typical children, according to the American Psychological Association, is 50%. Within the special needs community, it is higher, much higher. So when you become roommates and stay roommates, most likely it will probably end up in divorce. And so you have to, just like with happiness, you cannot just let life dictate how the way you're relating to your significant other. You have to be proactive. My husband is a psychologist. We couldn't fix ourselves. We got into therapy. And even if you all are trending okay, if you haven't taken the time to talk it out, talk out the initial trauma, and having a special needs child is a traumatic event. And lots of times it gets overlooked, but that has a way of turning your life upside down. And you have to learn a new way to exist. So even if you're trending okay, you may even want to consider, you know, just talking things out to make sure there's nothing, because trust me, if you don't deal with the situation, it's going to manifest in other ways. So just because you don't talk it out with somebody else, you might act it out in other ways. So it's very important to deal with that. So we became closer, but with work. And then it's very important to take the time to remember what made you happy before. If I were to ask any of you on the spot right now, what makes you happy? Are you able to answer that question? Especially if you've been on this path, you've got a high schooler. You might have been on this path for a very long time and have totally suppressed your happiness because of the sake of taking care of your child. It's critical in order to be happy all the way around, that you just don't channel everything into your child. But you gotta take care of yourself, you gotta take care of your significant other, if there's one in the picture, and also your child. It is a package deal. And so, how can you strive towards happiness if you don't even know what makes you happy? So it is absolutely critical to discover that. And so, you know, it's also important too that once you discover what makes you happy, that you are very deliberate about scheduling that. We talk a little bit more about that in our session. But, and also too, this might sound incredibly strange, but I am happier now than I ever was before Wyatt was born. I am happier now, I know it sounds strange, than I ever was before Wyatt was born, despite all of the complexities of his care. And the reason being is because of the struggles that my husband and I and me independently have fought through that has allowed me to become my authentic self through the support and love of my husband on this path, meeting the friends that I just talked about, that I met, that special needs parents that are in this room would have never met them had it not been for this path. Would have never met the NCPS staff that I've worked with, never met the fantastic principal that we have at Wyatt School, because he probably wouldn't have been at that school because that's not our home school. Because of the work that I did with my husband in the therapist's office to get closer to one another, probably would not have been motivated to do that had we been trending along okay. It's trauma that will make you look hard things in the face and make changes. And then once you build that foundation and that platform, then you set your trajectory much higher than what it possibly could have been had you just been trending along normally. And so what I'm explaining is actually a field of study that's been around over 20 years, and it's called post-traumatic growth. Anybody heard of that before? Okay, a couple people. With post-traumatic growth, I discovered it reading a wheelchair magazine. And in the wheelchair magazine, there were 6 or 7 people that were profiled. They all were able-bodied people before an accident. And then after the accident, they all became wheelchair-bound. And the interviewer was asking them about their lives pre and post the event. And all of them talked about their lives being better in spite of not being able to get around. And they also had similar circumstances about their lives being changed and how it's for the better and how they were able to get rid of excess, whether it be people or just with lives, just as far as activities they were engaging in that were not as productive. And so that is post-traumatic growth. And with post-traumatic growth, you're able to take a tragedy and turn it into a triumph. We thank you so much for your time today.